Let's talk some Chiefs football. That was impressive. Kansas City starts off their season beating Arizona 44-21 on the road. The second best offensive game of Mahomes' career, if you don't look just at the raw stats, but drive performance. So every drive, the Chiefs did this. Mahomes is the quarterback, second best ever as, well, look, it's his career because he hasn't been anywhere else. So, yeah, no Tyreek Hill game one. Maybe it ends up becoming some kind of issue. It definitely wasn't against an Arizona team that I think we like their safeties. We don't like their corners. It didn't feel like there was any resistance whatsoever. But I think it just kind of cycles back to, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this one, but it feels like there is a public media rush to try to turn on Mahomes or doubt this guy or to reset. Like, well, he's been this, but now, and a lot of this has to do with Tyreek Hill moving on to Miami. And we understand, like, he's a complete game changer, scares the hell out of you every single time. You're always worried about, like, the two busted coverages against him, which you could lock him in for 65, 70 snaps. The two times you don't, it's 14 points. And it was somebody like Mahomes with a huge arm was going to be able to get him the football. And they're working together this well, so they kind of understand each other's tendencies, which is a really, really important part of any of these great combos between a quarterback and a wide receiver. But it just makes me wonder, like, when somebody's clearly this good, all right, he's that special. Mahomes is going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, maybe because he was the anointed number one so soon, which I normally always push back on. But with him, I was like, yeah, I think it actually is him. Not to say I called it, but he's probably one of the rare athletes that I've ever not had some kind of resistance, because I always think we screw up early. You know, when it's early on in somebody's career and you're like, this guy could be this, this, and this. More often than not, I'll be right by going, I don't know, I got to wait. Like, if somebody's going to be a top 5 player or a top 5 quarterback and I see 2 years of it. With Mahomes, I went, yeah, I think this is kind of who he is. But yet, whether it's, I don't know, we can go back to Mike Sando's articles, which, as I mentioned in defense of the Lamar Jackson criticism, he found one guy out of 50 that works in the NFL that was a little bit more critical of Lamar than everybody else is. And then that became the quote. And that quote got turned into like this overall thought on Lamar Jackson. It's like, no, that's not how it works. But Sando had 2 different ones on Mahomes, where one was like, take away Tyreek, there's going to be major drop-off. Again, it's one game, so we don't have the answer to this yet. It might change who they are, but it might not be much of a drop-off. The more critical one that Andy Reid was even asked about in the follow-up, which is what's fascinating about this Sando article exercise, these QB tiers every year, is like, he finds one guy to shit on a starter, and then local media is like, so Mike Sando's article, one NFL exec shit on fill in the blank, your thoughts? As if the coach would ever go, yeah, I thought he was right on. We get some real limitations here behind center. But the other one on Mahomes, it was far more critical and specific, was take away his first read and then everything falls apart. Everything falls apart, man. Everything. I don't think everything falls apart. And then, like I like to do with anything like this, I'll think back historically and go, wait, do we always do this? And we maybe kind of do, but it still feels a little different to me. And I could be wrong. With Brady, it was a system guy cheats. Like, there were, after the 6th Super Bowl in New England and then Tampa getting his 7th, I'm like, there's still a guy out there at Buffalo Wild Wings with a couple of Lowenbrows in him. Again, I just like referencing Lowenbrow because nobody orders it. Because I think one time a guy did when we were bartending, we were like, are you fucking nuts? And then somebody's like, we actually do have it. The 6-pack's been there for like 2 years. We're like, well, we're going to give him the entire 6er. Moving on. I think there is still the guy that's like, you know, if it weren't for deflating the footballs, like deflating the footballs is your last line of defense, and it's a weak one. But I guess people have still kind of done it doubting Brady, but I just didn't even know why that guy would leave the house, because there's clear, like, nobody likes you. Manning was a little bit more justified because he was 3-6 to start his playoff career. Puts up numbers, can't win the close ones, didn't beat Florida at Tennessee. I'm telling you, man. I mean, if you're younger, that was like this carryover awful resume thing for Manning. Listeners around my age or older remember it well, but it would be repeated as if fact. And it's like, that's why Manning can't do all these things. And I think you could also argue Manning should have probably won a little bit more. Brady was in his way. And, you know, look, Manning, the poetic part of it all is that he got carried by a defense to win his 2nd Super Bowl. So, you know, maybe things even out a little bit. Rodgers, the playoff losses at home more recently, although I feel like he turned around some of the momentum in his career where it felt like he was slipping a bit, but he's 0-4 against San Francisco. And let's face it, I think his approval rating has gone down quite a bit in the last couple of years for maybe a couple different reasons. Breeze, there's definitely been some anti-Breeze people that are out there, and even more so of doubt. despite numbers, despite so many years of getting that team to just 500 when the defense couldn't stop anyone. Oh, it's Sean Payton's system. It's all the different things, whatever. Like, I don't understand why we spend as much time doubting the first tier guys when in fact we spend even more time questioning the Staffords, the Ryans, the Rivers, who passing yardage wise, not the best stat because the game is more open and this generation was going to benefit from that. But we're talking about Rivers, who's 6th in yards, Ryan, who's 8th, and Stafford, who's going to go into the top 10. And we're all over the place on those quarterbacks. So why are we doing it to the top tier guys? Because again, if I were doing my own quarterback tier group, I would go the elite guys, the 7 to 12 group that I love and I'm good with, and then 13 to 22 where I'm constantly asking my front office if I'm on the coaching staff, could we do better at this position? And then maybe after 22 or 23, we have a real problem. Either this guy sucks or our guy's playing on Saturdays as of now. So it gets me back to Mahomes. You want to be critical of something. It doesn't mean he should be removed from ever having any criticism whatsoever. But maybe even Jimmy Johnson beginning of last year, which would have been a podium take of him saying, I'd take Herbert over Mahomes. You're like, would you? What else is it? Is it the Super Bowl loss? Because I'll tell you right now, that loss against Tampa made me like Mahomes even more. And if he didn't have an offsides call at home against New England in a big playoff game, Mahomes might have another one. He went 30 of 39 yesterday, 5 touchdowns. Let's look at the depth chart. He's got Kelsey, who may be the best tight end. Unless you prioritize blocking, then it's Kittle and his combination. But Kelsey stays healthier, so I'll give it to Kelsey. You got Juju coming in, Valdez-Scantling coming in as well. Mecole Hardman's still there. Edwards-Helaire, by the way, looking fresh, like all these running backs, like Saquon, like Fournette. I mean, Saquon looked awesome yesterday, but that's that week 1 stuff. Not saying it's going to fall off, but it's just kind of one of those little reminders. You're like, man, guys are flying around right now because they haven't gotten hit in a year. And then even Pacheco went longest yard there late in the game, just getting yards all over the place. And McKinnon, number 1. You're like, oh, that's right. McKinnon, I love that guy. Everywhere he is, I always kind of like him. So there are some options. They have changed things around. And more importantly, it's about the defense because that's another thing that's on the Mahomes resume. The last 4 years of starters, if you go on Sando's combined defense and special teams, EPA, Kansas City has ranked 27th, 16th, 18th, and 23rd. So he is doing this on his own. And they're playing more rookies, starting 3 of them on the defense. 5 rookies that are playing significant snaps. 50% of the snaps from last year for Kansas City's defense are gone. And they've got a tough schedule. It was supposed to be tough against Kyler at Arizona. It wasn't. Herbert, Matt Ryan, Brady, Carr, and then Josh Allen. So we'll see what the schedule says. But we had James Jones dumping on him on this podcast. We had Bart Scott ripping him, getting a few things wrong there, saying they'd be out of the playoffs. It feels like the doubt for him is different than just the doubt when you're the headliner, right? The headliner QB is always going to have some of that doubt. But with Mahomes, it just always feels a little bit different. And there was almost this anticipation from some corners, this waiting to see it if it's going to look bad, despite zero evidence that this offense ever looks bad with Mahomes behind center. Couple other quick thoughts. I did watch the entire Arizona game. Kyler on the other side. The moonwalk out of the pocket is so impressive. Then to not be able to see who to throw to, not as impressive. We'll TBD on that one. No Hopkins. We know he's a completely different quarterback, despite the physical gifts. No Moore as well, who is really a playmaker for them. Arizona's missed a couple guys, but still, whatever. I have a Lamar contract segment that I'm going to do this week. I want to talk about how it compares to the Dak situation, how it compares to the other guaranteed money, because we still are fucking terrible when it comes to talking about NFL contracts. We act like the player is the most disrespected person in the public spotlight, and then we actually get terms like, oh, okay, this guy's just betting on himself. Like they made a pretty good offer. See if they could pull an Atlanta Braves positional player extension here and take him out of arbitration. Again, not the same, but kind of the same. Oh, he wants to play out the year, and then we'll see what happens. And by the way, they have the mechanism that I hate the franchise tag to be able to avoid having to do this all over again. But we're really bad at it, and I'm going to remind everyone. All right, a couple other quick thoughts. 2 wins that I think mean nothing. Chicago, I don't know what to do with that game. Fields completed 8 passes. I'm rooting for Fields. He's in an impossible situation. I think that's an awesome, just emotional win. The Pettis throw was a completely busted, weird-ass play. So, I mean, it's great that he saw him. I don't know what that thing means, and that's it. Other than if I'm a Bears fan, I had a blast on a day where it didn't look like it was going to work because I think Fields had 3 completed passes. On the other side for Trey Lance, a little early to get. I don't know that you take anything from that game and say it means anything. Another one, the Giants going for 2. Brian Daboll. laying into Daniel Jones. I feel bad for Giants fans. They have to watch a backup all season because that's what Daniel Jones is. He's a backup. This isn't going to work. He threw that pick in the end zone, and they did not want to let him throw the football again to try to get back in this game because Saquon, one, was terrific, and it actually worked. How many times are you going to see an NFL team go for a winning drive with the running back as the main option? You're not going to see it very often. I don't know that you'll see it double digit times this season. You might not see it 5, seriously. And that's what they did with Saquon. And then ironically, they did throw it in and they got the 2-point conversion. It worked. I think it means nothing, although they beat what we think will be a good Tennessee team. What Justin Jefferson did to the Packers yesterday, the overall numbers could have been worse as they slowed it down. And Cousins also missed him, underthrew him on another one where he was behind everybody. If you look at Jefferson's separation rate, it was called Rhode Island on the next gen stats. 2 more teams here, and it was the same game. Miami against New England. I'll say 3. I got a few notes here that I'm not going to get to. That's another thing, little PSA. We're not going to mention 32 teams every Monday. It'll be all right. You'll get through it. Miami's a better football team than New England. Let's start with the New England side of this thing. If you're not going to have a number 1 receiver, okay. Does that mean you can have a number 1 edge guy? No. Not if you're in New England. I went back and looked at it. What's the true number 1 receiver? Now, you could talk about Gronk in 17, that's how the offense worked. And by the way, all this stuff worked when Brady was there. So it's hard to criticize any of the personnel decisions. I just think these personnel decisions that became habit, it's a lot harder to justify them and talk about them when Brady isn't there anymore. Welker put up massive yards in 2012. He had almost 1,600 yards. Jules is like a 1 in New England system. I don't know that we would call Julian Edelman just an overall 1. There aren't 32 ones. I don't know if there's 15 of them. Maybe it's Randy Moss in 2009. The number 1 edge guy, like if you said New England has a real edge disruptor, and we're going to ask Damian Woody about the current guys. I don't know if that list is 10. It's kind of like my NBA franchise changing players. Just edge guys that kill everything and screw up. You're spending all week game planning for that one person. Is that list 10 in the NFL? I don't know. The last guy New England had that would even come close to fitting that, and I even think this is a stretch, would be Chandler Jones in 2015. I thought he was really good. I don't know that he was like great. And then if you look at some of the other stuff on the top 100, which, by the way, going back to Mahomes, the players voted Jonathan Taylor, Devontae Adams, and Cooper Kupp ahead of Patrick Mahomes on the players' top 100 vote. So looking at New England's roster, Judon's in the top 100, and Mac Jones is 85, which is too high. He's behind Kirk Cousins and Von Miller. No one's going to confuse me for a Kirk Cousins buddy system over here, but Cousins is a better quarterback than Mac Jones is at this point, and he's done more to prove that. So your 2 top 100s if you're New England. I think the Chargers have 8 or 9. Again, this is just a poll by the players. It doesn't mean everything, but it is something. It's not nothing. It's something. Like New England's talent is like, where is it? They don't spend on receivers, but they do. They normally don't. But New England, if you look at their cap hit stuff by position, they've spent the 3rd most on receivers. So when I'm normally writing down my notes, be like, they don't really put a lot into that except whiffing on the draft picks. Oh, wait, they do have a major wide receiver cap hit this year. Well, wait, with these guys, that's even worse. They don't spend on QB because they don't have to. They have a mid-first rounder in Mac. They don't spend on running back. No issue there. Don't spend on D-line this year. They're in the bottom half of the O-line. It's like, where the hell's the money going for a team that doesn't ever want a number 1 receiver, doesn't want a number 1 edge guy, has a rookie quarterback on a super friendly team contract? Like, where's the talent? Well, a lot of it's on Miami. A lot of it is on Miami. Bringing in Hill, bringing in Landry, some of the defensive guys that we're going to be hearing about all season long. But I'll say something that I don't think it's going to be popular with Miami fans. I'm afraid. Do you want me to get aggressive? You want me to share a take I'm afraid to share? Something you think about at home and write down in your legal pad and go, I can't say this after week 1. I'm going to say, I feel like Tua is a backup. And this is not confirmation bias. I want Tua to be great. I thought he was going to be a lot better. I loved him out of Alabama. I love the way he moved safeties with his shoulders and his eyes. I love the zip on all the intermediate throws. I liked the way that I thought he just went through his progressions perfectly. I thought he had more juice on the football when he was in college. He was also throwing to like all pros everywhere. I didn't like what I saw yesterday, despite the win and despite the numbers. Last thought, if the NFC East were a product, I would try to return it. I hate the NFC East. I hate what it does to my Sunday nights. The Giants did it for years, and the Cowboys did it again. It's just the worst. Oh, cool. NFC East team is going to suck on Sunday after I've been sitting here for 20 hours watching football.